The sharp sting of betrayal burned brighter than the fluorescent lights overhead as Claire stared at the termination letter on her desk. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from the sheer disbelief that after 32 years of unwavering dedication to Whitmore and Associates, they were discarding her like yesterday's news. The words effective immediately blurred before her eyes as she tried to process the reality unfolding around her. "What do you mean this is my last day?" Claire demanded, her voice cutting through the sterile silence of the Human Resources office. Across from her, Margaret Whitmore, the company's newly appointed CEO and granddaughter of the founder, shifted uncomfortably in her leather chair. At 34, Margaret had inherited both the company and an apparent disregard for the people who had built it. "We're restructuring," Margaret explained, avoiding Claire's piercing gaze. "Your position, it's just not aligned with our new direction." Claire felt the blood drain from her face. New direction? After 3 decades of shaping the company's financial strategies, mentoring countless young executives, and weathering every economic storm that had threatened to sink them, she was being told she didn't align with their future? "You can't be serious," Claire managed, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I have a contract, a legally binding agreement that clearly states—" "I'm aware of your contract," Margaret interrupted, finally meeting Claire's eyes. The younger woman's expression was a mixture of discomfort and determination. "And will honor all aspects of it, including your severance package." Severance package. The words hit Claire like a physical blow. They were treating her like any other employee who'd been let go, a mere line item in their financial reports. She leaned forward, placing both palms flat against Margaret's polished mahogany desk. "You know damn well what else my contract includes," Claire said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You've read it. The profit-sharing clause. 10% of all profits generated by my department for the next fiscal year. That was part of my agreement when I turned down 3 other job offers to stay here 5 years ago." Margaret's perfectly manicured fingers tapped nervously against the edge of her desk. "That clause was intended for active employees contributing to current operations. Your termination means—" "Bullshit," Claire snapped, surprising even herself with the vehemence in her voice. "The clause doesn't specify employment status. It specifies profits generated by my department. My department that, might I remind you, has consistently outperformed every other division in this company for the past decade." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning system. Claire could see the conflict playing across Margaret's face, the battle between corporate ruthlessness and personal conscience. But then something shifted in the younger woman's expression, hardening into the cold mask of executive detachment Claire had seen too often in board meetings. "I'm sorry, Claire," Margaret said, standing up to indicate the meeting was over. "We'll process your final paycheck and severance package by the end of the week. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings." The dismissal cut deeper than any insult could have. Claire rose slowly, her knees protesting after hours of sitting in meetings that morning, reviewing quarterly projections she would never see come to fruition. As she walked toward the door, she caught sight of herself in the floor-to-ceiling windows lining the hallway, 62 years old, silver-streaked hair pulled back in its usual neat bun, power suit still crisp despite the chaos of the day. They thought she was finished. Just another aging executive pushed out to make way for fresh blood and modern ideas. But as Claire made her way to her corner office for the last time, something stirred deep within her, a spark of defiance that hadn't dimmed with age. They might have fired her, but they couldn't erase the value she'd created or the rights she'd fought for in that contract. Her assistant, Michael, looked up from his desk outside her office, alarm flashing across his young face. "Claire? Is everything okay? I saw security heading this way." She forced a tight smile, waving off his concern as she entered her office. The space that had been her professional home for so long suddenly felt foreign, each award and framed recognition now seeming like cruel jokes. Methodically, she began packing her personal items into a box, photographs of her children now grown, a crystal paperweight from her 20th anniversary with the company, a small collection of stress balls she'd accumulated over the years. Through the glass walls of her office, she watched as words spread through the floor. Heads popped up over cubicle walls, phones were hastily hung up, and whispered conversations erupted like wildfire. Some colleagues met her eyes with sympathetic nods, others quickly averted their gaze, unwilling to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Michael appeared in the doorway, holding a stack of folders. "Claire, you need to see these latest projections. The Q4 numbers are going to be astronomical. If anyone deserves that profit-sharing clause, it's... Thank you, Michael, she interrupted gently, taking the folders from his hands. But it looks like I won't be around to see them realized. Her fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the top folder, feeling the weight of the documents beneath. Numbers she had nurtured, strategies she had crafted, opportunities she had identified, all about to be harvested without her. As she placed the folders carefully in her box, Claire's mind raced through the events leading to this moment. The subtle changes in company culture over the past year, the increasing marginalization of senior staff, the push for innovation that often amounted to reinventing wheels she'd already perfected. They had been setting the stage for this move, systematically eroding the influence of those who remembered how Whitmore and Associates had become successful in the first place. Security arrived to escort her out, 2 uniformed guards flanking her like prisoners rather than former colleagues. As they made their way to the elevators, Claire maintained her composure, head held high despite the burning sensation behind her eyes. The whispers followed her like ghosts, each one a reminder of relationships built and now severed. In the lobby, she paused by the company directory, running her fingers along the engraved names of past executives. Her own name wasn't there yet, a testament to the fact that she'd always believed there was more work to do, more contributions to make. Now, thanks to Margaret's ambition and short-sightedness, her legacy would remain incomplete. Stepping out into the late afternoon sun, Claire took a deep breath of freedom she hadn't known she needed. The city buzzed around her, oblivious to her private turmoil. For the first time in decades, she wasn't bound by the constraints of corporate politics or the relentless march of quarterly earnings reports. Yet instead of relief, she felt a growing sense of injustice that refused to be ignored. At home that evening, surrounded by boxes of mementos and achievements, Claire poured herself a glass of wine and spread her contract across the dining table. The profit-sharing clause stood out in stark black and white, its wording precise and unambiguous. They had dismissed her right before the biggest payday of her career, counting on her age and presumed resignation to keep her quiet. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a woman who had spent 32 years learning every trick in the business book, building networks that extended far beyond Whitmore's marble holes, and accumulating knowledge that was now hers to wield as she saw fit. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from colleagues and friends, each one offering support and expressing shock at her sudden departure. But among these notifications, one email caught her attention. It was from Charles Hargrove, a former Whitmore board member who had retired just months before Claire's termination. The subject line read simply, "We need to talk." As Claire opened the email, she felt the first genuine smile of the day tug at her lips. Charles had always been a man who understood the true value of experience and loyalty. His message was brief but telling, "I heard about today's events. Meet me tomorrow at our usual spot. There's something you need to know about Margaret's new direction." The following morning found Claire seated at their favorite cafe, watching the world rush by while sipping strong coffee. When Charles arrived, his usual confident stride seemed slower, his face lined with concern that hadn't been there during their last meeting. "Claire, my dear," he began, taking the seat across from her. "What happened to you isn't just about age discrimination or corporate restructuring. It's about control, specifically, control of the company's most valuable asset." He slid a folder across the table, its contents spilling out to reveal internal memos and financial projections Claire had never seen. As she scanned the documents, her initial anger transformed into something colder and more calculated. Margaret's new direction wasn't just about modernizing Whitmore and Associates, it was about dismantling everything that had made the company successful and selling off its most profitable divisions to the highest bidder. "The board doesn't know the full extent of this yet," Charles explained quietly. "But if these plans come to fruition, Whitmore won't exist as we know it in 5 years. And you, my dear, we're getting too close to uncovering the truth." Claire felt the pieces falling into place, the systematic sidelining of senior staff, the sudden push for rapid growth, the pressure to adopt technologies and partnerships that didn't align with the company's core values. They hadn't just fired her to avoid paying her bonuses, they had silenced her to protect their scheme. Her phone vibrated again, this time with a text from Michael. Attached was a screenshot of Margaret's calendar for the next month, filled with meetings at investment banks and private equity firms. The betrayal ran deeper than Claire had imagined, extending beyond personal grievances to something far more sinister. Charles watched her closely as she absorbed the information. "You know, Claire, sometimes being forced out gives you exactly what you need: perspective, freedom, and the ability to fight back without being constrained by company loyalty. The weight of his words settled over her like armor plating. Yes, they had fired her. Yes, they had underestimated her. But in doing so, they had handed her the perfect opportunity to expose the truth and protect the legacy she had helped build. The profit-sharing clause was just the beginning, leverage she could use to force open doors that had been slammed shut. As she left the cafe, Claire felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of a challenge worthy of her skills and experience. They thought they had neutralized her, relegated her to the ranks of forgotten executives. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, armed with knowledge, connections, and a determination that only comes from having nothing left to lose. Back at her apartment, Claire began organizing the evidence Charles had provided, cross-referencing it with her own files and contacts. Each document added another piece to the puzzle, revealing a pattern of decisions that bordered on corporate sabotage. The irony wasn't lost on her. After decades of protecting Whitmore's interests, she now found herself preparing to take action that might fundamentally change the company's future. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. The voice on the other end belonged to someone she hadn't heard from in years, a journalist known for exposing corporate corruption, someone she had worked with during Whitmore's early days. Claire, the voice said urgently, we need to talk about what's happening at Whitmore. I have sources telling me things are about to get very interesting. As she listened, Claire realized that the story was bigger than just her termination or even Whitmore's future. It was about challenging a corporate culture that valued short-term gains over sustainable success, that discarded experience and wisdom in pursuit of trendy innovation. The profit-sharing clause had been her safety net, now it would become her weapon. Over the next few days, Claire methodically reached out to former colleagues, industry contacts, and legal experts. Each conversation added to her understanding of the situation while simultaneously expanding her network of allies. People who had once been merely professional acquaintances now became crucial pieces in her growing strategy. Margaret's mistake hadn't been just firing her before her bonuses, it had been underestimating the depth of Claire's commitment to Whitmore's true values and the strength of her professional relationships. Every snub, every dismissive comment, every attempt to marginalize her experience had only strengthened her resolve. Late one night, as she reviewed the mounting evidence, Claire came across a memo detailing Margaret's proposed timeline for the company's transformation. The dates aligned perfectly with the profit-sharing period outlined in her contract. It wasn't coincidence, it was calculation. They had timed her termination to maximize their gain while minimizing her compensation. The realization sparked something primal within her, the same fire that had driven her to excel in a male-dominated field decades earlier, that had pushed her to innovate when others wanted to maintain the status quo, that had kept her fighting for fairness throughout her career. This wasn't just about money or revenge, it was about integrity, about proving that experience and wisdom still had value in a world obsessed with youth and disruption. Her phone lit up with another message from Michael, this time containing audio recordings of recent executive meetings. The voices revealed cracks in Margaret's facade, dissent among the leadership team, concerns about the aggressive timeline, questions about the legality of certain transactions. Each recording was a thread Claire could pull to unravel the carefully constructed narrative. As dawn broke over the city, Claire sat surrounded by documents, digital files, and handwritten notes, piecing together a strategy that would protect not just her interests but the future of the company she had helped build. They had fired her, thinking it would silence her. Instead, they had given her exactly what she needed, the freedom to fight back on her own terms. The media was already sniffing around, drawn by rumors of massive restructuring and potential sell-offs. Claire knew she had to move carefully, balancing public exposure with strategic private negotiations. Her years of experience taught her that timing was everything, knowing when to strike, when to hold back, when to let others make the first move. She reached out to trusted allies in the financial press, planting seeds that would grow into stories challenging Whitmore's direction. Simultaneously, she began discreet discussions with major shareholders, presenting them with carefully curated evidence of the risks involved in Margaret's plans. Each conversation was a calculated step in a larger dance, designed to build momentum without triggering immediate backlash. Charles called daily with updates from his remaining contacts on the board, providing insight into the growing divide between Margaret's vision and the traditional values many directors still held dear. "They're starting to question her methods," he reported one evening. "Especially when presented with concrete evidence of potential legal issues." Meanwhile, Claire's legal team worked tirelessly to explore every angle of her contract, finding interpretations and precedents that strengthened her position. The profit-sharing clause became more than just a financial consideration, it evolved into a symbol of the broader struggle between short-term profit motives and long-term sustainability. Her network expanded exponentially as former colleagues emerged from the woodwork, eager to share their own experiences of marginalization and concern about the company's direction. Younger employees, those Margaret had presumably counted on to support her vision, began reaching out with stories of disillusionment and frustration. The generation gap she had feared would work against her was actually becoming a bridge, connecting seasoned wisdom with youthful idealism. Each piece of evidence, each ally gained, each media inquiry gave Claire more leverage. She orchestrated meetings between key players, creating situations where truths would emerge naturally rather than being forced. Her approach was methodical yet flexible, adapting to new information while maintaining focus on the ultimate goal. Margaret's response was predictable: increased security measures, tighter control over internal communications, attempts to discredit Claire's sources. But each defensive move only highlighted the insecurity of her position. The more she tried to contain the situation, the more it spread, like water finding cracks in a dam. During one particularly tense week, Claire received an unexpected visitor, a representative from one of Whitmore's largest clients, expressing concern about the company's direction and seeking assurance about their future partnership. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very relationships she had cultivated over decades were now coming to her for guidance, effectively giving her influence over the company's most vital assets. Her days became a blur of strategy sessions, media interviews, and private meetings, each interaction adding another layer to her campaign. She learned to navigate the delicate balance between public advocacy and private negotiation, knowing when to speak out and when to listen. The experience was exhausting but exhilarating, tapping into skills and instincts honed over a lifetime in business. One evening, as she reviewed footage of Margaret's recent public appearances, Claire noticed subtle changes in the young CEO's demeanor, the confidence replaced by defensiveness, the visionary rhetoric giving way to damage control. They had fired her thinking it would end her influence. Instead, they had forced her to evolve, to become something more powerful than they could have imagined. The media coverage intensified, with major business publications running investigative pieces questioning Whitmore's strategy. Financial analysts began downgrading their outlook, citing concerns about leadership stability and strategic direction. Share prices fluctuated wildly as investors weighed the conflicting narratives emerging from the company. Through it all, Claire maintained her focus, using each development to strengthen her position while carefully avoiding actions that could be perceived as purely vengeful. This wasn't about personal satisfaction, it was about demonstrating that experience and ethical leadership still mattered in the corporate world. As she prepared for a crucial meeting with several major institutional investors, Claire reflected on how far she had come since that devastating day in Margaret's office. They had tried to define her termination as the end of her career. Instead, it had become the beginning of something far more significant, a movement to reclaim the values that had made Whitmore successful in the first place. Her phone buzzed with another message from Michael, containing internal emails showing growing resistance within the company ranks. The tide was turning, and Claire knew she was at the center of a transformation that would redefine not just Whitmore, but potentially the entire industry's approach to corporate governance and succession planning. The meeting with the institutional investors proved more challenging than Claire had anticipated. Seated at the head of the conference table, she faced a panel of skeptical fund managers whose primary concern was preserving their investments rather than supporting any particular vision for the company. Their questions were sharp, probing, and occasionally condescending, betraying the assumption that her age equated to obsolescence. "How do you propose to address the market's demand for digital transformation?" asked Mr. Thompson from Blackstone Capital, his tone suggesting he already knew her answer would be inadequate. "Surely you can't expect Whitmore to compete in today's environment without embracing cutting-edge technology." Claire leaned forward, letting her years of experience speak through her calm demeanor. "Transformation isn't about chasing every new trend, Mr. Thompson. It's about implementing solutions that genuinely enhance value creation. During my tenure, we integrated numerous technological advancements, but only after thorough analysis demonstrated their ROI. The current strategy appears to prioritize buzzwords over bottom-line impact." She slid a detailed report across the table, compiled from internal documents and industry research. This analysis shows that nearly 40% of recent technology investments have failed to deliver promised efficiencies. Meanwhile, core business units, those I helped develop, continue to generate consistent returns. Ms. Chun from Vanguard Investments raised an eyebrow. But aren't those returns dependent on outdated models? The market is changing, Mrs. Whitaker. Can traditional approaches really sustain growth in this environment? Traditional doesn't mean obsolete, Claire responded, gesturing to the projection screen where she had displayed comparative performance metrics. Look at these numbers. Our established client relationships, refined over decades, consistently outperform newer accounts in both retention and profitability. Innovation should complement experience, not replace it entirely. The debate continued for over 2 hours, with Claire methodically addressing each concern, presenting data-backed arguments, and drawing on her extensive network of industry contacts to support her points. By the end of the meeting, the investor skepticism had transformed into cautious interest. As the group filed out, Mr. Patel from T. Rowe Price lingered behind. Mrs. Whitaker, he said quietly, your analysis raises important questions about the current leadership's direction. However, the market demands results quickly. How do you propose to bridge this gap between traditional values and necessary evolution? Claire smiled, recognizing the real question beneath his words. Change is inevitable, Mr. Patel. But sustainable change requires a foundation of proven success. I believe Whitmore's future lies in honoring its strengths while strategically integrating innovations that enhance, rather than replace, our core competencies. The next phase of her campaign involved engaging directly with Whitmore's workforce. Through carefully coordinated leaks and anonymous surveys, Claire gathered compelling evidence of widespread dissatisfaction among employees regarding the new direction. Young professionals, whom Margaret had presumably counted on to embrace change, expressed frustration with the lack of mentorship and the erosion of company culture. Armed with this information, Claire organized a series of town hall meetings in collaboration with concerned shareholders. These events, held virtually to circumvent company restrictions, allowed employees to voice their concerns anonymously while showcasing alternative visions for the company's future. The response was overwhelming, with participation rates far exceeding expectations. During one particularly emotional session, a junior analyst spoke through tears about how the loss of senior mentors had impacted her development. They tell us to innovate, but when we ask for guidance, we're told to figure it out ourselves. The institutional knowledge that used to flow freely is now locked away or gone completely. This sentiment resonated throughout the organization, sparking a groundswell of support for Claire's cause. Former colleagues volunteered to participate in mentorship programs, while industry veterans offered to share their expertise through guest lectures and workshops. The movement grew organically, fueled by authentic desire for meaningful change rather than mere rebellion against authority. Margaret's response was swift and heavy-handed. Internal communications became increasingly controlled, with new policies restricting employee interactions with external parties. Social media activity was monitored, and any hint of dissent was met with disciplinary action. Yet these measures only served to highlight the administration's insecurity, further eroding morale and strengthening Claire's position. Behind the scenes, Claire worked tirelessly to coordinate legal challenges against several of Margaret's proposed initiatives. Working with a coalition of former executives and concerned shareholders, she filed motions questioning the legality of certain transactions and demanding greater transparency in decision-making processes. Each legal action was carefully timed to maximize impact while maintaining plausible deniability regarding her direct involvement. The media played an increasingly crucial role in amplifying Claire's message. Investigative journalists, armed with documents provided through secure channels, published exposés revealing questionable practices and conflicts of interest within the current leadership. Major business publications featured op-eds written by respected industry figures supporting Claire's stance on balanced corporate evolution. One particularly damaging article detailed how similar strategies had backfired at other companies, resulting in catastrophic losses and reputational damage. The piece concluded with a direct quote from Claire: "Success isn't measured by how quickly you can disrupt the status quo, but by how effectively you can build upon proven foundations while embracing necessary change." Public opinion began shifting dramatically. Industry conferences featured panel discussions about the importance of experience in corporate leadership, with many speakers referencing Claire's situation as a cautionary tale. Professional organizations issued statements emphasizing the value of institutional knowledge and mentorship in sustainable business growth. Through it all, Claire maintained a careful balance between public advocacy and private negotiation. She met regularly with key stakeholders, presenting comprehensive plans for revitalizing Whitmore's core business while strategically integrating modern innovations. These proposals weren't mere theoretical exercises, they were detailed roadmaps based on current market conditions and proven success metrics. Her network expanded globally as international partners and competitors took notice of the unfolding drama. Several major firms approached Claire with offers of collaboration, recognizing the opportunity to benefit from her expertise and the networks she represented. Rather than viewing these as competing interests, Claire saw them as potential allies in reshaping the industry's approach to corporate evolution. The board of directors, once unified in their support of Margaret's vision, began fracturing under the weight of mounting evidence and public pressure. Directors who had initially dismissed Claire's concerns now found themselves questioning the wisdom of the current strategy. Private meetings became battlegrounds of competing ideologies, with Claire's supporters gaining ground through persistent presentation of facts and logical arguments. Charles, leveraging his remaining influence on the board, orchestrated several key votes that delayed implementation of controversial initiatives. Each delay bought Claire more time to strengthen her position and gather additional support. The profit-sharing clause, initially viewed as a minor contractual detail, evolved into a symbol of the broader struggle between short-term profit motives and long-term sustainability. As the situation reached a critical point, Claire found herself at the center of a movement far larger than she had initially envisioned. What had started as a personal battle against injustice had transformed into a crusade for corporate responsibility and ethical leadership. The lines between personal vindication and professional revolution blurred, creating a powerful force that neither Margaret nor her supporters could easily counter. Every morning, Claire woke to dozens of messages from employees, industry professionals, and concerned citizens expressing support and sharing their own stories of corporate malpractice. Each message reinforced her belief that this fight was about more than just Whitmore, it was about establishing new standards for corporate governance and leadership succession in the modern business world. Her legal team worked around the clock, filing motions, responding to countersuits, and coordinating with regulatory agencies investigating various aspects of Whitmore's operations. The complexity of the legal battle required Claire to draw upon every ounce of her experience, forcing her to adapt strategies and anticipate moves in ways she never had before. Through it all, she maintained her composure, channeling her emotions into focused action rather than reactive anger. The termination that had once seemed like the end of her career had become the catalyst for something far more significant, a redefinition of what it meant to lead, to innovate, and to honor the responsibilities that came with corporate power. As she prepared for what promised to be the most crucial phase of her campaign, Claire reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. They had fired her thinking it would silence her. Instead, they had unleashed a force that was reshaping not just one company but potentially an entire industry's approach to progress and accountability. The turning point came during an emergency board meeting called by Charles, who had finally gathered enough support to challenge Margaret's leadership. Claire wasn't present in the room, she didn't need to be. Her evidence, her arguments, and her vision had already permeated every corner of Whitmore and Associates. As the directors reviewed the damning reports, listened to testimonials from key stakeholders, and examined the legal risks mounting against them, it became clear that Margaret's new direction was unsustainable. Margaret tried to defend herself, but her confidence faltered under the weight of scrutiny. When asked about the profit-sharing clause she had dismissed so casually, she stumbled over her words, unable to justify why someone who had contributed so much to the company's success should be cast aside without honor or fairness. The boardroom grew silent as Charles placed Claire's meticulously prepared presentation on the table, a roadmap for restoring Whitmore's core values while embracing innovation responsibly. By the end of the meeting, the decision was unanimous. Margaret would step down as CEO, and an interim leadership team would take over until a proper successor could be appointed. But more importantly, the board agreed to reinstate Claire, not just as an employee, but as a senior advisor with full authority to oversee the implementation of her proposed reforms. When Claire received the news later that evening, she allowed herself a rare moment of quiet triumph. Standing on her balcony overlooking the city lights, she felt the weight of everything she had fought for settle into place. Not with vengeance, but with purpose. She had proven that experience wasn't outdated, it was invaluable when paired with integrity and vision. In the weeks that followed, Claire returned to Whitmore, not to her old office, but to a newly created role, Chief Legacy Officer. It was a title that reflected both her contributions and her mission to ensure the company stayed true to its roots while evolving thoughtfully. Her first order of business? Honoring the profit-sharing clause in her contract, and extending similar incentives to long-term employees whose loyalty had been overlooked. Under her guidance, Whitmore began to heal. Younger employees worked alongside seasoned mentors, blending fresh ideas with time-tested strategies. Profits soared not because of reckless disruption, but because of careful, deliberate growth. And Claire? She found renewed energy in shaping the future of a company she loved, proving that age wasn't a liability, it was an asset. One crisp autumn morning, as she walked through the halls of Whitmore, now filled with laughter and collaboration instead of tension and fear, Claire paused by the company directory. This time her name was there, etched alongside those who had come before her, a testament to resilience, wisdom, and the power of standing up for what's right. And for the first time in years, she smiled, not at what she had lost, but at what she had built.